of President Trump's fiercest GOP opponents in 2016 is saying he won't run against him in 2020. Florida Senator Marco Rubio told the Associated Press, quote, "I'm not primarying the president, and no one else should either, unless we want to lose the White House." Senator Rubio's support of President Trump feels a long way away from the 2016 campaign, when he and then candidate Trump traded insults that ranged from professional to personal.
We are not going to allow Donald Trump to do to America what he did to those students at Trump University. You will not con us.
He couldn't get elected dog catcher in Florida.
He's flying around on Air Force One.
Here's the guy that inherited $200 million. If he hadn't inherited $200 million, you know where Donald Trump would be right now? Selling watches in Manhattan. If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it.
When they put Marco on to refute President Obama's speech, do you remember that catastrophe? It's Rubio.
A con artist will never get control of this party.
Oh boy. Joining me now is John McCormack, a senior writer at the Weekly Standard, a conservative magazine. He joins me now from our Washington bureau to talk about his new article, Rubio Goes Nationalist. John, thanks so much for joining us. It was really such a reminder to hear some of that tape. Marco Rubio back in 2016 saying that a con artist like Donald Trump will never have control of the Republican Party. What changed, John, between then and now when you have Senator Rubio clearly getting out of President Trump's way for 2020?
Well, a couple things. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. He's a Republican president, and 90% of the Republican Party supports him. So when I spoke to him a couple weeks ago asking him this question, people like Arizona Senator Jeff Flake, who still say they genuinely believe that Trump just sort of lacks the basic level, stability, temperament, character to be president, they say, hey, he should face a primary challenger in 2020. Marco Rubio says, no, that would only help the Democratic nominee. And he didn't make this argument, but I think a lot of Republicans simply think it would be hopeless to challenge Donald Trump in a Republican Party, given his 80% to 90% approval rating among Republican voters, not the general electorate.
So then for Senator Rubio, is this a matter of political calculation, or is it possible that the two never actually differed that much on policy to begin with?
Well, I think there are a couple things going on here. One, a lot of conservatives are genuinely happy that Trump has moved towards them. Just as Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party, Republicans in Congress have changed the Trump agenda. The Republican tax cut was pretty much any sort of tax cut you would have seen Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell send over to any Republican president. Justice Gorsuch is the kind of Supreme Court nominee any Republican president would have been made. So, for conservatives to support those conservative policies, that's totally to be expected. What Rubio is really trying to do now is sort of, take his pre-existing agenda, which was aimed at the working class, things like a bigger child tax credit that helped more voters, more Americans who made less than $50,000 and don't pay income taxes. Remember that 47%
Yes.
That Mitt Romney talked about. So that's all stuff consistent with Rubio's pre-Trump agenda. He's sort of coming more towards Trump now and supporting the trade war with China. He says he's focused exclusively on China, and that's more of a geopolitical concern. But it does seem to be an evolution from his pre-Trump agenda.
Well, so according to 538, Senator Rubio has voted in line with President Trump's position 96% of the time. So where are there differences between the two?
I asked him about that because when he ran for re-election in 2016, he said he would do so because, in large part, he was going to stand up to the next president, whether that was President Clinton or President Trump. He actually ran 7 percentage points ahead of Donald Trump in Florida, so he appealed to a significant number of people who didn't like Donald Trump. When I asked him those questions, where have you exactly stood up to him, he expressed some polite disagreements on the rhetoric on human rights in North Korea. It wasn't the kind of fiery response you'd expect if a Democratic president had sort of praised Kim Jong-un as a leader who loves his people, a brutal dictator like that. He has introduced a number of bills. One would impose sanctions on Russia, automatically new sanctions, if Russia is determined to have meddled in a new American election. So there are different things here and there. He's spoken out at times, on Charlottesville last year when there was a Charlottesville terrorist attack by that white nationalist. Rubio spoke out. But in general, he's focusing on areas where they agree, on policies where they agree, trying to influence, trying to sort of play an inside game here.
Well, and as you point out in your piece, at age 47, Rubio is young enough to run for president in the relatively near future. Do you think that we will see him stick with his rebranding, as you call it, or see him shift once again?
You don't really know here. I think that, as I say in the past, Rubio has managed to sort of rebrand himself and create an image of a changing politician without really changing much on policy. Immigration is the one big exception. He ran in 2010 opposed to pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants, then became a very outspoken supporter of that in 2013, then sort of backed away from the comprehensive approach as he ran in 2016. But other than that, it's been more of shifts in tone and emphasis, and I think given this history of Senator Rubio, it shows that, listen, the Republican Party has changed every few years in what its tone and emphasis and brand has been, and I wouldn't be surprised for that to change in the next 3 to 6 years again.
All right. Never too early to start talking about 2024, I suppose. John McCormack of the Weekly Standard. Thanks very much, John.
Thank you.